So, you want to be a vampire? Being generally suave, sophisticated, and supernaturally powerful, vampires make great video game protagonists. And who wouldn't want to step into the shoes of a vampire for a little while? Mysterious and beautiful, these creatures of darkness have been popular in films for the best part of a century. It's a wonder, then, that there aren't more video games about them. There aren't quite as many games that let you run loose as a darkness-loving bloodsucker as you'd think. One of the best-known and most successful celebrity chefs in the business, Bobby Flay, is now practically a household name. The chef's culinary origin story dates back to when he was just 17 years old, when he dropped out of high school and began cooking at Joe Allen, a famous Broadway insider hangout, says Food Network. Chef Allen quickly noticed Flay's natural-born talent and potential in the kitchen, so he offered to pay his tuition at the French Culinary Institute. Young Flay was a head chef by the time he was 20, and the rest is history. Today, the renowned TV personality has hosted 16 different shows on the Food Network and Cooking Channel, published 15 cookbooks, and earned a reported net worth of $30 million, via Insider. But we're not completely without great vampire games. They do exist but, like vampires themselves, they're hidden in the shadows. The New York native was also the first chef in history to receive a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, beating Julia Child and Wolfgang Puck to the honor. You've just got to know where to look. Want to sink your teeth into the fleshy neck of a game that lets you play as a vampire? We've rounded up the best across all formats. Read on to discover the best vampire games out there. Want to support GameSpew? If you decide to buy any of the games on this list, please consider using our affiliate links, included below each entry. It won't cost you anything extra, but we'll get a small slice of the purchase. Thank you. Castlevania. Symphony of the Night. While nearly all of the Castlevania games have you going up against Dracula, perhaps the most notorious vampire in media, Castlevania, Symphony of the Night also has you playing as one. It's undoubtedly one of the best vampire games ever made. Alucard, see what they did there, is Dracula's son, but unlike his father he hasn't given up on mankind, probably because his mother was a human. Even Flay's cat Nacho is internet famous, with a whopping 238,000 Instagram followers. Given his status as a culinary mastermind, it's unsurprising that Flay has high standards when it comes to food. And clearly, a multimillionaire can afford to have expensive taste. Here's how much it would cost to eat all of Flay's favorite restaurant meals in a day. Being the conscientious vampire that he is, you can't make him drink blood, but you can make him rest in coffins to save your game progress. He's also effortlessly cool and has access to many supernatural abilities. Who wouldn't like to be able to turn into a bat, a wolf, or even some mist? There are many ways to play Castlevania, Symphony of the Night. You can get a physical copy of the original PlayStation release, but it's now very expensive. You can decide for yourself whether or not each dish is worth the price tag. Flay loves a cheeseburger just like the rest of us. Delicious dishes don't always need to be complicated or overly expensive. The first food that Flay cannot live without is a quintessential staple when it comes to American cuisine. That's right, it's a simple burger with American cheese, and the version at J.G. Mellon in Manhattan is Flay's top pick. I grew up eating this burger, and it actually inspired me to cook my burgers on the griddle. The patty gets a great crust on it that way, the beat Bobby Flay, host, shared with Eater. Moreover, this perfect sandwich inspired Flay to open Bobby's Burger Palace, he told The Hollywood Reporter. You can find out what makes this unfussy dish so special for yourself for $13, via J.G. Mellon. If you can't make it to New York, try the Flay's Burger Palace version of the cheeseburger at locations in Connecticut, Georgia, or Maryland, via Bobby's Burger Palace. Flay knows his pasta. Who doesn't enjoy pasta? Flay has several carb-forward items on his list of favorite restaurant dishes, some slightly more expensive than others. The easiest way is to purchase Castlevania Requiem on PS4, which bundles Symphony of the Night and Rondo of Blood together. Every once in a while, Flay enjoys meals at Spartina, a Cal-Italian eatery in Los Angeles, and Via Carota, an upscale Italian trattoria in New York City. If you'd rather play on Xbox, the Xbox 360 version is playable on Xbox One. Vampire. When the developer of Life is Strange announced that its next game would be an action RPG about a vampire in London, we were very much intrigued by how it would turn out. Vampire, as it's called, turned out to be a very good vampire game indeed.
Of all the games on this list, it's perhaps the only one in which you truly feel a like creature of the night, dependent on blood to maintain and develop your powers. Although it's no longer on Spartina's rotating menu, Flay loved to indulge in the restaurant's delectable ravioli with burrata cheese and sea urchin, which ran for $20, Yahoo reports. At Via Carota, Flay orders for a crowd and recommends that newcomers try every vegetable dish, a few pastas, and a crostino or two, per tasting table. It's also the best looking too, which should come as no surprise given that it's the newest. If you want to live the life of a vampire, making hard choices and engaging in conflict with those who seek to bring an end to your undead endeavors, give Vampire a try. If you heed his advice and request all 15 veggie dishes, 3 pastas, and 2 appetizers, your check will be around $400 before tax and tip, calculated using Via Carota's menu. Ouch. You can play it on PS4, Xbox One, PC or Switch. Read our review of Vampire. The Masquerade, Bloodlines Vampire. The Masquerade. Bloodlines is quite old now, but that doesn't stop it being one of the greatest vampire games out there. Plunging you into a dark recreation of LA, Vampire. The Masquerade. Bloodlines lets you loose as vampire affiliated with one of a number of clans. From there, it's up to you how you progress in the game. You have choices to make, important choices, and when you're not solving problems with words you're likely to be solving them with violence. Being an RPG, how you develop your character is up to you, but rest assured, there are plenty of vampiric abilities for you to master and make use of. Unfortunately, the developer of Vampire, The Masquerade, Bloodlines, Troika Games, is no more, but a sequel to the game is currently in the works from Hardsuit Labs. If you want to eat Italian like Bobby Flay, get ready to splash some cash, and lots of it. The chef is no stranger to the steakhouse being basically culinary royalty. Flay unsurprisingly likes to treat himself to a feast fit for a king when the mood strikes. One luxurious meal that Flay has an affinity for is the Tornado Maxwell entree at Dudley's on Short in Lexington, Kentucky, Food Network shares. While you wait for that to land, you can pick up Bloodlines on Steam. Vampire. The Masquerade. Coteries of New York. Vampire. The Masquerade. Coteries of New York is a little different from the rest of the games on this list, for the fact it's a visual novel. That means you don't quite get to fulfill your dreams of roaming the streets as a vampire, but it does tell an excellent story about vampires. This elaborate concoction combines petite fillets, lump crab, potato puree, and béarnaise sauce in one indulgent $36 platter, via Dudley's on Short. Flay says it's the perfect 3-course meal in one single bite, which makes it sound worth every penny. When it comes to upscale dining, there's another restaurant Flay can't live without: Wolfgang's Steakhouse in New York City. And the fact it's set in the Vampire, The Masquerade universe is a major plus. The game's story tells the story of a struggle between two vampiric factions, Camarilla and Anarchs. When I want steak on a Sunday night, it's where I go. It feels like old New York, the Iron Chef told The Hollywood Reporter. Set in New York, if the title didn't give it away, it's littered with famous landmarks as backdrops. And with 3 different playable characters, there's plenty to experience. The lunchtime Cajun spiced ribeye steak, served with mashed potatoes and broccoli, will set you back $55, via Wolfgang's Steakhouse. Coteries of New York is a vampire game designed to be played multiple times, as the choices you make and the characters you play as will heavily influence how the story turns out. Is your wallet hurting yet? Flay has a soft spot for New York City restaurants, as you may have noticed. Many of Flay's favorite restaurants are in New York City, which makes sense. Besides being a great place to eat, it's also the chef's hometown, according to biography. While we wait for Vampire, The Masquerade, Bloodlines 2 to release later this year, it's a great way to reintroduce us to the game's universe. And what's a trip to the Big Apple without a delicious slice of pizza? When Flay gets a hankering for za, he heads over to Roberta's in Brooklyn and orders the bee sting pizza, reveals The Hollywood Reporter. Topped with tomato, mozzarella, basil, sopressata, chili, and honey, this $22 pie is perfect for fans of sweet and spicy, via Roberta's. If the James Beard Award-winning chef is in the mood for Chinese, though, he books a table at Budokan, a Pan-Asian restaurant in Chelsea Market, via The Hollywood Reporter. Meals there remind him of his childhood Sunday dinners, which often took place at Chinese restaurants. His favorite menu item? The extravagant Peking duck for 2, which comes with cucumber, scallion, and hoisin sauce and costs $74, per Budokan. Of course, Flay also approves of his own food. Flay proudly owns 5 restaurant concepts in addition to his burger chain, according to his website. These include Bobby Flay Steak in Atlantic City, Mediterranean establishment Gato, temporarily closed, in New York City, and 3 Las Vegas restaurants, Mesa Grill, Shark, temporarily closed, and Amalfi, where he serves southwestern fare, Spanish-style seafood, and coastal Italian cuisine, respectively. While it might be hard to pick favorites across so many eateries, the Gato dish Flay is most proud of is the kale and wild mushroom paella he shared with Tasting Table, calling the vegetarian bestseller the underdog dish of the year. This delectable plate, complete with egg and crispy artichokes, goes for $34, via Gato. Now for the answer we've all been waiting for. How much does it cost to eat like Bobby Flay? Obviously, this list is too much to cover in one day, but if you spread things out, the star's favorite restaurant orders add up to a grand total of $654. Are these heavenly dishes worth the dent in your wallet? It's available on Steam. Blood Omen. Legacy of Kane, developed by Silicon Knights and released on the original PlayStation way back in 1996. Blood Omen. Legacy of Kane was one hell of a game. In it, you play as Kane, a slain nobleman who returns as a vampire to get revenge on his murderers. He didn't want to return as a vampire, though, that was a necromancer's doing. But as he goes about seeking a cure for his new affliction, he starts to see it as more of a blessing. Ultimately, it's up to you whether Kane embraces his newfound powers or throws them aside for the good of Nosgoth. Tough choice, huh? While Blood Omen. Legacy of Kane was also released on PC a year later, it's a hard game to play today. It's not on Steam or even GOG. Your best bet is to pick it up digitally on the PlayStation Store. Then you can play it on PS3, PS Vita or PSP. Though if you still have an original PlayStation set up, you could get a physical copy of the game for it. Legacy of Kane. Soul Reaver, essentially a sequel to Blood Omen. Legacy of Kane. Soul Reaver goes with the notion that Kane embraced his vampiric abilities in the aforementioned title. Nosgoth is now a very different place, and when Raziel, the game's protagonist, evolves in a way which makes Kane, his creator, jealous, he is executed. Other forces are at work, however, and Raziel is given life once again to seek revenge. It's a vicious cycle, isn't it? Released physically on a variety of formats including the original PlayStation and Sega Dreamcast, you can track down a copy to play it if you want. You're probably better off just buying it on Steam if you have a PC or laptop though. You can also pick up the game's sequels there too. Castlevania. Lords of Shadow 2 Mercury's spin on Konami's classic Castlevania franchise had you playing as Dracula rather than taking the fight to him. In Castlevania. Lords of Shadow 2 you take control of Gabriel Belmont, who has fully embraced his role as the Prince of Darkness. He's not really the villain that vampire hunters make him out to be though. In fact, he's trying to save the world from forces that are even darker than people could imagine. While the original Lords of Shadow is a much better game, this sequel is still worth playing if you're a fan of the series. Castlevania. Lords of Shadow 2 is available on PS3 and Xbox 360 if you like to play games on console. It's best played on PC though, and it's available on Steam. You can pick up the original Lords of Shadow and Mirror of Fate HD on there too. The Elder Scrolls Online you can become a vampire in quite a few of the Elder Scrolls games. It's probably the most fun to do so in the Elder Scrolls Online, though. Vampirism is a condition in the Elder Scrolls Online, one that you can contract by either getting attacked by an NPC vampire, or being fed on by another player who has the vampire affliction. It comes with its own skill tree, giving you access to a range of new abilities, both active and passive. It also has some drawbacks though, like being more susceptible to fire. The negative effects of being a vampire also grow over time, but you can return them to their base level by feeding on a human. The Elder Scrolls Online is one of the best massively multiplayer online RPGs out there, and it's even better for the fact that you can play as a vampire. You should definitely give it a try. It's available on PS4, Xbox One and PC. Infamous 2. Festival of Blood. When developers have a bit of fun, the results can be utterly wonderful. Take Infamous 2. Festival of Blood, for example. A standalone expansion for one of the PS3's best games, it put a vampiric spin on things in the spirit of Halloween and turned out to be brilliant.
In Festival of Blood you take control of Infamous 2's Cole McGrath, who has just been bitten by a vampire. Already feeling the effects of slowly becoming one of the undead, he has just one night to find the vampire that turned him and halt his transformation. For a piece of DLC, there's quite a lot of content in Festival of Blood, including some nifty new vampire-themed powers. Honestly, if you've still got a PS3 set up, you should really give it a try. That's the only way to play it, unfortunately. There are numerous BloodRayne games, and none of them are what you'd call great. BloodRayne Betrayal is probably the best of the bunch though. While previous BloodRayne games are of the 3D action persuasion, BloodRayne Betrayal is a 2D combat-focused platformer. Its gameplay is pretty brainless, but it looks bloody nice thanks to its comic book-styled visuals. So, if you want to turn off your brain, take in some beautiful sights and hammer buttons like a maniac in order to obliterate enemies as a female vampire, BloodRayne Betrayal is the game for you. BloodRayne Betrayal is available digitally on PS3, Xbox 360 and PC. The Xbox 360 version is also playable on Xbox One.